Welcome to the Reasons to Reason podcast. I'm your host and captain, Sal Galati. This is the show that's going to talk about all the things we're not supposed to: God, religion, and politics. So strap in, prepare to get offended, and maybe, just maybe, our nation can learn how to reason again. Boys and girls, do I have a treat for you today? I'm going to interview a new friend I've made, Paul Yarnold. You can look him up for yourself. Well-cited professor, statistician, mathematician. I would call him a philosopher, well-rounded individual. I met him on a train, and this is an encouragement for you to get out there and talk to people. Just sitting on a train, actually sat in a spot I never really sat. I don't know why. Felt compelled to sit in a different spot. He comes up in the next stop, and we strike up a great conversation, talking about all the things we're not supposed to. God comes up, and he shares with me a few things. One of them we're going to go through today, and the other we're going to go through part 2 of this interview. But in part 1, he goes through affliction he has that is a result of a health event he had that I don't want to spoil, that I believe is a miracle that he's even alive still. He's a walking testimony. He's a living miracle. But he went from the top of his field to suffering with an affliction that has made that work more difficult. But in the way God does things, it made him more prepared and more able to do another amazing achievement, which was in a conversation with ChatGPT. He helped ChatGPT arrive at the conclusion that the God of the Bible must be the God that both sustains and created the universe, mainly an eternal, all-knowing, all-powerful God that is outside space, time, and matter, which is interestingly enough, is the God that the Bible describes. So I want to encourage you to get out there and talk to people. I never would have had the blessing of getting to know this man if I didn't look up from my phone and strike up a conversation with him. I'm so grateful I did. I made a new friend. Trust you'll be blessed by hearing what he has to say. Without further ado, I introduce you to my friend Paul.
Thanks for the introduction, and I look forward to speaking to you about memory loss before I forget what I was going to talk about. That's a little memory loss joke. So I was minding my own business. I was going to move to San Diego, and I was in the O'Hare Hilton. And so I decided, well, I think what I'm going to do is take a dry run for what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. So I grabbed my suitcases and began rolling them towards American Airlines. And I was told that I almost made it to the baggage claim at number 2 for American Airlines. I found this out much later, and how I can remember that, well, I'm not sure. I had a cardiac arrest, my second of my life, and I fell over dead on the concrete. What happened was that I realized this happened about almost 4.5 months later because of what's called memory loss. And I had no idea before this, even though I have a PhD in psychology, even though I've studied memory, even though I was a professor of medicine at Northwestern in 8 different areas, I still had no idea what memory loss really means. And the only people who have an idea what memory loss means are people that are extremely rare, because they have to know somebody dearly and also observe what happens to them after they have a memory loss. So a man named Jay found me. He's a strong man, and he had learned how to do CPR, and he was pumping and pumping while his wife ran and got the authorities. And the authorities picked me up and shipped me off to Resurrection Hospital. Isn't that appropriate name? And they made me come back to life. And then I had 10 more cardiac arrests where my heart stopped that same day. And normally in Chicago, I don't know if it's universal, the physicians stop after 6 arrests because there's too much brain damage. But in my case, they kept going. And I do remember that some time, I don't remember how much after this, I was seeing one of the physicians that was there, and he looked at me with giant eyes as if he was seeing a ghost. And he said, "Do you have any idea what happened to you?" And I said, "Well, I think I had a heart attack." And he said, "No, well, you had 11 of them, and you died each time. And we never resuscitate people over 6, but we just kept going with you." And I said, "That's what I said, Sal." I said, "Wow, well, thank you. I appreciate that." And I realized that I had memory loss after 4 months.
I want to interject for a moment. One of the reasons why we decided to maybe tell this story is because before we started, Paul had mentioned how he's in a weird situation because he's aware, highly aware that he has memory loss, and he's also trained in this field. He's able to almost treat himself in a way that no one from the outside could, because no one who has the memory loss that he has would ever be able to know what it feels like. You know, most people with memory loss, you ask them, well, what's it feel like I have memory loss? They'll be like, what are you talking about? They might not even acknowledge they have memory loss, or B, they're not in their head enough to understand what's happening. But you seem to have an understanding of what's actually going on, and you've made adjustments in your life to kind of deal with it.
Thank you, Sal, and you're exactly correct, and that is the crux. That is the most important thing I have to communicate. So I decided that since I obviously had memory loss, what I had to do was I had to start writing down on a little slip of paper what it was that I wanted to remember. And so I wrote down a few things that I wanted to remember, and I looked at it, and after a short period of time, not even a minute, I had no idea what I had written down meant. Why did I write these words down? And so what I said is, oh my, it's time-based. So that means I have to figure out how long I can remember something. So I decided that I had to figure out how long I could remember things before I forgot them. So I wrote down some things and then timed how long it was before I no longer remembered what it was. And I would be saying to myself unconsciously, subvocally, what it was, and I would forget. 19 seconds was my maximum recall time. This was remarkable. And so I decided, well, what exactly am I forgetting? Because I remember some things. I remember my mother's name. I remember some of the states that I've lived in. I remember all kinds of stuff. I just don't remember what I'm doing right now. And so I said, aha. So then I wrote down on a piece of paper what it was that I wanted to remember, and then the context of it, so that I could understand why I wanted to, where did this word come from? Why did I need to remember it? And I found out that 19 seconds was my maximum recall, so it was really hard to do that because you have to be succinct. It takes talent. It takes exercise to be able to record what your thought is and why it's important. So I made 400 of these things, and then I cut them into pieces and put them on index cards. And I did what's called a Q sort. I sorted those cards into categories of like events, like things. And there were 13 categories. There's no way I'm going to be able to make sense out of 13 categories. So I resorted them into categories that were more similar. And I kept going with my resort until I came up with 4 categories that cannot be further discriminated. In fact, they overlap. The first one is numbers. I'm a mathematician, statistician. I've looked at an uncountable number of numbers. Isn't that sort of a joke, an uncountable number? But it's not an infinity, but it's way too many to remember. And how many numbers are there? And they're all random variables in my opinion. So numbers, that makes sense. Numbers, names. There are so many names. I've lived in 17 states. Why I can remember that number, I don't know. I can remember numbers and names from before I had that heart attack, but it's the new ones that I just can't encode. Or if I can encode, my brain is not able to figure out where they are encoded. They're trapped on names. I'm on names. And so every town I've lived in has stores by the same name and other stores that have the similar name or another name or just stupid names that have nothing to do with anything in reality. And how many people do I know? You know, I've having lived in so many places and having been in so many situations, names are very difficult. And names, numbers, place. And by the way, you see how I have to say with these to recall. I have to, because that's a mantra, and I have it written down on multiple slips of paper, and I carry that with me, so I know what it is, so I don't become frustrated. Numbers, names, places. There are so many places, and streets have such idiotic names, and there's just no way for me to remember this random variable that is omnipresent. It's numbers, names, places, and dates. Now, dates are a number, but they're also, so I remember, the 4th of July and December 25th and my birthday and that sort of a thing, but dates are numbers. And so multiple things have both of those attributes. They could be a number and a name, or a date and a number, or a place and a date. And the more of those four categories that the item I'm trying to remember shares, the harder it is for me to recall. This is why people with memory loss cannot understand what is going on. And in my case, for several months, I did not know for more than 20 seconds at a time, going forward, every 20 seconds, that I was alive. And it's terrifying when somebody figures it out.
For the audience, I want them to understand the reason why he told me he does this device with the names and the places and the numbers. So he does get discouraged when he doesn't remember, that he doesn't get mad at himself or frustrated. I thought that was so insightful.
Well, the thing to do for people who do have memory loss or similarly affective disorders is to let people that they meet and people that they know that they have this condition. Some people are embarrassed, but the only reason they're embarrassed is because they're doing something they wish they weren't doing and they don't know how to fix it. And they're afraid of what the people that matter to them or even strangers will think. And they'll think that it may present themselves in a bad light this way. And so it's humiliating. And so to me, its strength comes from letting the people that I'm around know that I am afflicted and that it's absolutely not intentional. And I show them what's in my phone. Inside my phone, I have the names written down of everybody that I've met at the different churches I go to and at the different stores I go to and so forth, because I need to look at that before I go into that situation so I know as many names as I can possibly remember. And that helps me. But people who I really love, who are just wonderful people, who give me a hug when they see me, if you can believe that. And I'm not a good-looking guy. And so they don't get angry with me because they understand. So you need to let people understand that you are afflicted and that it's painful and that you hate it and that you're working to try and figure out a way to circumvent it. And they will understand. And if they don't, what can you do? You're doing your best. And if your best is not good enough, then que sera, sera.
I wanted to ask you, do you think, and I know you're a believer in the Lord and you believe that he's a good God, and although he puts us through certain trials, it's always meant for good. I think of the man who was born blind, I believe, that Jesus healed. And they were trying to ask him, well, what did his parents do that he deserved this? Because that was the mentality. He goes, they didn't do anything. This was done so God could be glorified. And he went on to heal them. I see the prophets going through trials that the Lord puts them through so they could better serve the kingdom, serve the purpose, have the heart of God, knowing the affliction that maybe God felt. We could go through various examples of that. Can you see what God is doing through your affliction? Have you seen an area in your life where you've gotten stronger, or a gift that you have come across that you didn't even realize you had?
Absolutely. And I spent most of my life being an academic. I was accepted into college when I was 12, and I've been a full professor of 15 different areas in my life in 5 different institutions, and published 600 articles and 12 books and 10 to 15 software systems, I don't know. And I always knew that was a gift from God. And most of my family perished early of a genetic disease, and it skipped me. So I knew that I was blessed. And so what I decided to do was to give everybody in the world access to all of my articles and software and books for free. That was the basic modus operandi. I was still, though, not a good person because I was embroiled in the competitive aspects of getting things published against people who did not want that stuff published, competitors. And so it became a constant fight. And it took me 100 to 110-hour weeks to do this. I lived in my laboratory for 20 years. So then since this time, I actually can't understand many of the articles that I've written. The math is too difficult. I have forgotten a lot of my vocabulary. I was a nationally competitive speech champion and gave thousands of lectures. And it became difficult for me to remember what I was talking about. What this opened up for me is short-term conversations with strangers. And everywhere I go, I speak to and say hello to everybody I see. And I find all kinds of people, and including people who need somebody to say hello to them, and people who have had a tragedy happen and start to cry after we talk about it for a little while and I figure out what it is, and people who are into their faith but they don't have anybody to talk with and share it, and to people who don't understand faith, I explain to them how it's impossible that we exist without something have created us. And Sal knows I've done this with ChatGPT and asked him some questions. I'm still a very good scientist, so I asked the machine some questions, and the machine just had to deduce that God, in fact, did create and sustains the universe.
The Holy Spirit's firing me up. You nailed it. Here's what I wrote down. God took you. You knew you were blessed. You had these works. And he's repurposing you for the ability to share some of these complex ideas with people that maybe before you wouldn't even be able to put them into terms they would understand. You've been humbled by that. You've always been blessed with a strong mind, with strong vocabulary, strong math skills, and now you're humbled to maybe see the world through other people's eyes that maybe aren't gifted in those areas. But now you have like the best of both worlds. You had the capacity, and now you could communicate it to people. Wow, I'm seeing what God's doing with your life. I'm sensing it. And it's a wonderful kind of parlay into the aspect of this ChatGPT conversation. So it's evident, and I think anytime people don't arrive to the conclusion that the God of the Bible is the true God, it's because they are suppressing the truth. And now we take this thing that is, I've done an episode on AI and how people are growing to trust it as almost God. Well, here's the AI telling you who God is. And like what I believe is going to happen, the Chinese version of it, when this AI gets seated with the ability to suppress the truth, it may point people to the Antichrist, is what I predict will happen eventually. If you want to hear more about how I kind of arrive at that conclusion, you could check out AI in the End Times. That said, I'm going to keep you on pins and needles for part 2 of the conversation, where we go through Paul's rationale and reasoning and how he got ChatGPT to arrive at the conclusion that I believe to be the true conclusion, that the God of the Bible must be the creator and sustainer of the universe. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. Trust you'll join us for part 2 of the conversation.
Sing it!
Thanks for joining us for another episode. I hope I got you thinking and out of your comfort zone. Believe me, the biggest fear your government has is a population that is thinking and talking to one another. So get out there, take a risk, start a conversation, make a friend, and reason with each other. Share the show with someone who you think needs to hear it. I wish you peace and love.